I, 30 female, just found out my husband's 32 male been lying to his work about my pregnant sister, 26 female, being his wife. Can I even fix this? Throw away because I'm embarrassed and don't want this on my main. I'm really struggling right now and could use some advice from people who aren't in my immediate circle because I'm too embarrassed to talk about it with anyone else. I'm 30 and I've been married to my husband, 32 male, for 5 years. We've been together for 7 and we met back in college. He was the first guy who made me feel comfortable in my own skin. I've always been more of a tomboy, into sports, preferring jeans over dresses, and my body's more of an athletic side. Growing up, that wasn't always easy. But my husband loved me for who I am, and he never made me feel like I needed to change. I really thought I'd found the perfect partner. I also have a younger sister, Rosalie, 26 female, and we've always been close. She's beautiful and effortlessly charming, the kind of person everyone just loves. Our mom has had some serious narcissistic tendencies and definitely played favorites growing up with Rosalie being the golden child. It wasn't her fault, and she never asked for the attention. In fact, she's always been super kind and supportive, even though she's the type who avoids confrontation and puts herself last to make others happy. So we've never had any issues between us, but all those comparisons growing up left me with insecurities I've never fully shaken. About 2 months ago, Rosalie's long-term partner left her after finding out she was pregnant. She was devastated, and we agreed she should move in with us for a while to get back on her feet. She's been staying with us ever since, and at first, everything seemed fine. My husband didn't seem to act any differently, so I didn't suspect anything was wrong. 1 month ago, though, I asked Rosalie to drop off something for my husband at work because I was swamped. I didn't think much of it, just that it would save me time. Well, she did, and it turns out that when she got there, everyone assumed that she was his wife. They congratulated him on his beautiful wife and their soon-to-be son, and instead of correcting them, he just went along with it. He admitted that he liked how his coworkers reacted to having a beautiful wife and a baby on the way. It made him feel good. One of his coworkers asked him where his wife was at an event, and since Rosalie had already dropped by once, before they assumed she was his wife, and he didn't correct them. It made him feel validated, that he was living up to some ideal that I guess I didn't fit into. I didn't find out about any of this until a few nights ago. We were out for dinner, celebrating our anniversary, when we ran into one of his coworkers at the restaurant. The guy asked my husband where his wife was, and when my husband said something vague about her being busy, I felt like the ground just dropped out from under me. The date was basically ruined, and we went home as soon as we ate. I confronted him as soon as we got home, and that's when he finally told me everything. To say I'm devastated would be an understatement. My husband and I have always agreed on being child-free. We had the discussions early on in our relationship, and I thought we were on the same page. I don't have a strong desire to be a mom myself, partly because I have PCOS, and I know it would be difficult for me to conceive. But now I feel like my husband's been using my sisters to live out some fantasy life that I could never give him. Rosalie had no idea about any of this. When I told her, she was horrified. She kept apologizing even though none of this was her fault. She feels awful and has even offered to move out, but I can't ask her to do that. She's already going through so much, and I want to be there for her. But it's so awkward now. I can see how guilty and uncomfortable she feels being in the middle of this mess. This situation has also ripped open old wounds I thought I'd healed. I spent most of my 20s in therapy, working on my self-esteem and trying to overcome these insecurities, especially like the ones tied to growing up in Rosalie's shadow. I thought I'd finally come to a place where I could love myself or who I am. But now it feels like all the progress has been undone. Years of therapy feels wasted, and I'm back to square one, questioning my place in my husband's life. Since finding out, things have been incredibly strained at home. My husband and I haven't even been sleeping in the same bed, and we've barely spoken to each other. The trust we once had feels shattered, and I have no idea how to even start repairing it. I feel so betrayed. If he can lie about something like this, what else is he hiding? Did he think I wasn't good enough to be introduced to his colleagues? And why has he never talked about his work friends before? I'm starting to wonder if he's been hiding me because he's embarrassed by who I am. This whole thing has dragged up every insecurity I've ever had. I've always felt like I didn't measure up to Rosalie, even though she's never done anything to make me feel that way. But now it feels like my husband has confirmed my worst fears. He chose to pretend Rosalie was his wife because she fits some ideal image and I don't. I honestly don't know how to move forward from this. I love my husband and I want to believe this was just a huge mistake, but it feels like so much more than that. I'm also worried about how this is affecting Rosalie. She's been nothing but supportive, and I can see how uncomfortable and guilty she feels being in the middle of this. I'm really struggling here. How do I even begin to address this with my husband without it turning into a huge fight again? I feel so low, but I can't stand the idea of our relationship ending. I love this man more than anything. He keeps saying sorry and trying to plan date nights. I'm honestly not in the mood for any of it. I've cried 2 times and have binge ate more than I have ever before. How do I live my life now, knowing that I'm possibly not enough for my husband?
What the? Yo, this guy's got something wrong with him.
Am I the asshole for filing for divorce because my husband over-tightens all the jar lids? His over-tightening jar lids has been an issue since we were just visiting at my house when we were dating. First, it started with things that he used, and then over time, it became every damn glass jar with a metal lid. He tightened them so much that I couldn't open them without assistance. It wasn't a huge deal if he was there, but if I was alone, it was so annoying. More times than I can count, I've opened a new jar of something because I couldn't get the jar open. It's been a reoccurring cycle for over the past 5 years. It's just a thing that would escalate until I had a major meltdown and freaked out, screaming, frustrated, and seemingly crazy because it's just a lid. Then it would get better for a while, and then it would slowly become an issue again. Just getting worse and worse until I reach a breaking point again. Sometimes I'd literally feel insane for being upset over jar lids. He initially claimed that he did it to keep food fresh. After many arguments about it and my insistence that I don't believe it keeps anything fresh, even if it does make things last longer, I don't care if it means I can't eat my freaking food when I want. I'll just replace things that go bad because they're closed normally. Then the excuse was that it's a habit. So about a month ago, my husband had a family emergency and had to travel out of state for 10 days. First day he's gone, I discover a jar that I can't open. I was annoyed and was going to the store to buy new pickles when the neighbor said hi and to let him know if I needed anything. While soon-to-be ex is out of town, I said here and got the jar, which he opened. The next day I saw him outside and asked him to open another jar. He offered to come in to open all the jars, and I agreed, and he came in. He went to the fridge and opened all of the jars except for 2, which he even couldn't open. I thanked him profusely and told him I'd bake him some of his favorite cookies later in the week. He laughed and said it's no big deal, and after confirming that I wouldn't be upset if the remaining 2 jars were destroyed in his attempt to open them, he took them home to his garage to open them one way or another. He said that he heard me screaming about over-tightened jar lids a few times over the years, and he's really pondered if I was crazy or if my husband was really over-tightening the jar lids. He said, this was intentional. It was every jar, and I'm sure he doesn't regularly use hot pepper paste or mango puree or any of your other fancy cooking stuff. Then he held up 2 jars he couldn't open and said, I don't know why he's doing it, but it wasn't an accident. And he left. I locked the door, and I sat on my kitchen floor and cried. Then I felt hot and lightheaded. I vomited in the trash can. My chest hurt. It crossed my mind that I might be having a heart attack. I thought about calling an ambulance, but I sat back down on the kitchen floor and instead okay with just dying if it was a heart attack. Later that day, the neighbor came back with the open jar of hot fudge and apologized that he couldn't save the figs. He said he broke the jar trying to get it open. He also apologized for what he said about my husband doing it on purpose. I assured him it was okay. I couldn't sleep that night. Tossed and turned all night. I call out of work. By 10 a.m. I realized that I couldn't stay married anymore, and I made an appointment with a lawyer for the next day. There are literally no other issues, no cheating, no abuse. We have a good sex life, both have good jobs, nice house, no financial issues. He was absolutely blindsided when he came home, and I told him I wanted a divorce. He still won't admit that he tightened the lids on purpose. He suggested we go to marriage counseling, but I refused. There is no point. I just literally can't get past the goddamn jar lids. I still feel a little bit crazy about that. I have no idea why he would tighten every jar lid so tightly that I couldn't open it. He's given me no reason. He still won't even admit that he did it on purpose, but the hot pepper paste is in the back of the fridge. I use it only when I make Indian food. It's behind other things. He's never used it. It's nothing you could put in food without cooking it. The pepper paste could not have been an accident. It couldn't have. Maybe he put mango puree on his toast or his oatmeal, but the pepper paste could not have been an accident. That's what my life comes down to. I'm getting a divorce because the lid to my hot pepper paste was over tight. If it had been every jar except that one, I could try. I could have a sliver of doubt. I could do something else. I just can't get past the hot pepper paste. Most of our friends and family either think I'm crazy or an asshole. What do you think?
Ex left me for a good friend, so now I'm going to meet and work for their favorite artist. Last year, my partner of many years who I was ready to propose to and marry, and one of our good friends started getting far more close than I was really comfortable with during a period I was working long and hard to provide for us. She started getting distant and they were cozying up. Eventually, they tried to guilt me into accepting a polyamorous relationship, which I wasn't cool with. And when I ultimately put my foot down on the idea, she ended up choosing them over me. My ex tried to turn the entire friend group against me, which didn't work but did scar me mentally. And I found out a lot of other terrible things she had been doing, like using my money for parties or spending it on her now current partner. She consistently trashed me on social media when I never talked bad about her, even after all the hurt and pain I went through. I went through a massive depressive episode that I'm still struggling with today, losing my business, sanity, and even my human will to live. It was the darkest time of my life for this and some other reasons. But I kept reminding myself that I have to outlive my enemies, and a life well lived is the best revenge one can have. So I set the plan in motion. There is a very famous DJ my ex has a huge tattoo for and absolutely loves more than anything. And her new partner is a massive fan as well. I believe they even traveled to go see said artist recently. And while I had this plan for a while, I kicked into overdrive and finally got it done after finding that out. I worked many years as a videographer and photographer in the touring music world. It was a dream that I eventually gave up to be at home more and focus on building our relationship more as I got older. During my career, I worked with some decently known artists and built a few important connections. I opened up my old contacts list and went down the rabbit hole until I was able to get in contact with the DJ's team and get set up to be paid handsomely for doing touring work. Running fan meetups, managing their Instagram content, etc. My work and name will be promoted all over the socials for my ex and her partner to see, and you best believe I'll be taking plenty of selfies. And while my original motivation was pure spite, I am super excited to be following my dreams again and getting another opportunity to be a creative. Plus, meet so many amazing new people on the road again. The best revenge is success. People want you to fail so bad and know that they can live rent-free in your head.
Okay, so am I the asshole for repeatedly calling someone stupid after they accuse me of lying about my children's ethnicity?
No, we're not.
No, I guess.
Okay, my husband is Dominican and I'm Irish. Our kids look like him in terms of facial features, but they inherited my pale skin. Our son has his father's dark hair, but my daughter is borderline dark blonde. Genes are weird. What are you gonna do? Both my kids and myself have my husband's last name, which is a popular Dominican last name. There have been many times we get looks when people hear our last name and my husband isn't around, but it's never been too bad and usually I shrug it off. Due to my husband's work schedule, he's rarely at school events, so most people just know me. There's another little girl in my daughter's class with the same last name as us. Her mom also volunteers often. When we met, she flat out said, "You're not Dominican." And I said, "No, my husband and my kids are." And she said, "But your last name is X." And I said, "Yeah, because it's my husband's." She pointed out how pale they were, and I said, "Yeah, genes are weird." But every time we see each other, she brings it up somehow, making comments about how pale the kids are, finding it weird that they don't know Spanish. My husband didn't learn growing up, so they don't know it either. I just let it roll off because while it's weird, I'm not about to get into a pissing contest. The teachers asked the kids to make collages about their cultures. My daughters had stuff related to being a Dominican and stuff related to being Irish. They had a whole culture day where parents were invited. The mom of the other little girl saw my daughter's collage and rolled her eyes, thankfully not in front of my daughter. There were no other kids around at the time as they were getting food. It was just the parents looking at the collages. I asked her, "What is your problem?" And she said, "You're not a real Dominican." And I said, "I never claimed to be." She said, "Your kids aren't either, and that your husband is probably only a little Dominican, and we're claiming a culture that's not ours." I was dumbfounded. All I could say was, "Are you stupid?" And she said there's no need to be defensive. Finally, I had enough. pulled out my phone, and showed her pictures of myself with my husband and the kids. She stared at it for a moment and mumbled an apology. I said, yeah, maybe research how genes work so you don't make yourself look stupid in front of a bunch of third graders. She got teary-eyed and walked away. I got the stink eye from some other parents, which I ignored, and when I told my husband later, he said calling her stupid repeatedly when she already apologized was an asshole move. Am I the asshole?